Welcome to Icons of Dragon Ball, and joining me on this edition, a guy who really needs no introduction. He's an actor, he's a coach, an artist, ADR director, and you've heard his voice in One Piece, Full Metal Alchemist, Lupin the Third, and of course, in Dragon Ball, he's best known as the voice of Goku's best friend Krillin, and Goku's father Bardock, and the original Toonami Tom. Sonny Strait is here with me today. Hello, sir. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hamehameha, bitches.
That's the perfect. I was not expecting that. That's like the perfect response.
Well, thanks for that introduction. That wasn't necessary.
Everybody seems to love my introductions because, I could sit here and go through the whole history, the artiste behind Elfquest, or one of them, as you said before we started recording, and things like that.
Go back to my first high school play.
Well,
I think it was Huck Finn. I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. No, I thought we were going to go back. Well, we'll talk about it. So you do have a huge, you do have a big resume. And so you were an artist before becoming an actor. Is that correct? Is that what you wanted to do as a kid when you were like drawing a lot as a kid?
I was a professional comic book artist before I was a professional voice actor. My parents kind of encouraged me in the arts when I was a kid. My mom could draw anything she looked at, so she was always encouraging me to draw.
Wow.
Do impressions of just any cartoon character. Donald Duck when I was 4. First successful cartoon drawing that looked like what I was drawing at 6. So they were always encouraging me to do more creative stuff at a very early age for me. But as far as, getting work, the first paid thing I got done for art, comic books. And then I became a professional theater actor after that.
And then that would eventually bleed into your voice work, which we're going to get to here in a second. But I wanted to ask you, so besides your mother, I didn't even know that, who were some of your artistic influences? Like, did you read a lot of comics when you were a kid? What kind of stuff were you into?
Oh, yeah. The first comic book I read was Fantastic Four number 43, I believe. It was the first time that the Fantastic Four battled Blastar, the living bomb burst. It was Jack Kirby art.
Wow.
And I remember we were going on a trip to Mississippi to visit some relatives. And my dad bought this Marvel 3-in-1 package. You get like 3 comics in one. And I'd never read a comic book before. First page. And my mind was just blown by that artwork. I was just like, what is this? And I was hooked at that moment from then on.
So Jack Kirby's one of your big ones.
Jack Kirby, you know what? And I never tried to draw like Jack Kirby, but the power that he was able to portray, for me to draw comics, just seeing that made me want to do it. I never tried to draw like him though, but I do have influences that I tried to draw like. Pini being one of them. She's the creator of Elfquest, and let's see, Will Eisner. Comic book artist, one of the biggest awards you can get is an Eisner Award. And the guy they named it after was a huge influence on me. A lot of underground cartoonists were influences on me. Robert Crumb, Peter Bagg, a lot of the 60s artists I was into it as well.
The golden age.
yeah, exactly. But I usually was drawn to, once I got into high school, because I was more into the underground comics, a lot of drug-fueled comics. But they were so cool, just so psychedelic and weird. And usually of a deeper nature. Also, I loved heavy metal. Oh, my God. That was started by a guy named Mobius. So that got me attracted to a lot of French artists as well, a lot of artists from Belgium as well. So I was really influenced by comics across the board. But then American comics around Dark Knight, when Frank Miller did Dark Knight and Alan Moore did Watchmen, that kind of brought me back to the superhero fold as well.
Yeah, those were really different. And it's funny you mentioned heavy metal because I remember I saw the heavy metal animated film with John Candy and fun movie. But I remember when I was in 7th grade, they had the Great American Teach-In, and this lady insisted that was an illegal movie. She's like, this movie is illegal and you should never watch it. And she was straight up lying because the movie was in theaters. It was on home video. And then when I actually saw the movie, and keep in mind, I was in 7th grade, I think I know why she said that. You know what I'm saying? I think I know. You weren't supposed to be watching this stuff as a kid, but even
Yeah,
back in
it was
those days,
definitely an animated movie for adults.
right? Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you, did you ever have any aspirations to be an animator?
Oh, not really. I mean, we do some animations at my studio. Mostly just draw the characters and have my animators move them around.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you about Sunny Strait Studios. So, tell us about that before we go into like the voice stuff, because that seems to be one of your big projects now. How did that whole thing start, and what do you got? What are you working on right now, if you're allowed to say?
It started on I started teaching classes on voice acting. Real need for that. There were so many people who wanted to know how to get into this business, and there really wasn't a school available for it. Not a dance studio in town, and a friend of mine is an engineer at Funimation, a guy named Neil Malley, would set up a portable recording studio wherever we went, and then we would record people there. And he's such a good mixer that even though we didn't have a professional booth at the dance studio, decent demos from what they did in class. And we thought, well, why don't we just give them the demos? It's better than nothing, right?
Right.
Talking to Chris Rager, and I was directing him in some show at Funimation, and he said he was sad because he didn't have any money. Got a engineer, and the next thing I know, he's teaching at Chris Sabat's studio, Okatron 5000.
Right.
I called him up and I said, hey, man, I said you could teach, but I didn't tell you could do it better than me. I said, I'm teaching out of a dance hall, Inspired me to get my own studio space.
So if you want to promote, go for it now. Anybody out there, are you still doing classes? I'm assuming you are. If you want to go ahead and do a plug.
I've got one the last weekend of next month. It usually sells out like the last 2 weeks before the class, but I think it's already sold a few. You just go to sunnystraightstudios.com and take the basic dubbing class. It's $600, and I know that sounds a lot, but it comes with a professional quality demo. Our soundproof booth that was designed by this Funimation engineer, Neil, to remind me how we can get a better recording at my studio than even Funimation now, which is cool. So they get a really good quality demo, and demos, they don't. You could just get a demo for $600, and that's really hard to find. So it's a great deal, and so many of my students are working in the business now. Now I have a new engineer working. He's actually the head of engineering at Funimation. He said, I love going to Funimation and seeing all of your students walking around. I said, yeah, I like that too. And that we get, 20 to 30% of my students actually get work, way higher than I thought it would be.
Wow.
I figured we'd teach every other month and maybe get 1 or 2 students a year. And it's more like 2 or 3 per class, sometimes more.
Well, I feel like you have the edge because, if you take your class, you're working with professionals that have been working in the business for decades, worked on big shows, long shows in some cases, very long. One Piece and Dragon Ball are never ending, it seems. And I feel like it seems like a pretty good value. I mean, 600, yeah, you might take some extra hours to save up for it, but with what you get, and you get to work with professional equipment, learn about etiquette and things like that. I don't really see that being a bad deal, because I know a lot of folks that want to do a voice acting and voice work, and I feel like going to school, I mean, it's just like anything else. You want to be a filmmaker, go to film school, same thing,
Yeah, and if you go to film school, it's going to cost you a lot more than $600.
Right. Wow. So sunnystraightstudios.com, and you said they can sign up for classes for the end of September.
Yeah. And they sign up now. And I do them every other month. If you can't do it now, save up for it. And I used to do it once a week for a couple of hours for 6 weeks. That was the class. And then I started finding out that a lot of my students were coming in from other states.
Right.
Week. And I said, oh, you know what? Let me just put them on the weekend. So now what I do is a weekend workshop Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So people from out of town or out of state or even out of the country, I have people from England and Australia and New Zealand coming in and just stay in Denton for the weekend and get the courses. I also like to hang out with them. Especially if we finish early, a lot of times we'll just go to local restaurants and hang out. And I'll say, well, let's just do last hour class at a local bar or restaurant, and they'll just do Q&As over drinks. Anybody underage over food.
I think that's worth it, man. I think that's
fun.
worth it. Yeah.
It's really fun. And also, once you take my basic class, I have advanced classes too. They do improv exercises. They do whatever project they want. And they've got plenty of people there that they can pull from to do these projects. And I basically just give them the space and stay out of their way, which is amazing.
Well, I think it's also great for networking too, because you're gonna see names coming in and out of these studios, like as you're working or whatever in that area. I mean, in that area, you're gonna see people who are working on active shows, like Colleen, Clink and Beer. You'll see them running around, even if it's not even on purpose. You know what I mean? It's kind of cool. It's almost like going to acting class in L.A. You might run into somebody. You never know.
You know what? It's even more than that, more than just connections with people already in the industry, because a lot of my students have started their own studios.
Wow. Okay.
And so they just got together and went, hey, you guys think the way I do. Let's start this studio. So it is really good. And also, these people in these classes, especially the ones who are taking classes from everybody, they're going to be the ones that make it in the industry. So you want to know them now, so that when they make it big or they get a break, they can give you a break if they see something that you can do.
Right. That's the beautiful thing about networking. And yeah, Sonny Strait Studios is the place to go for that. Now,
one part of my studio though, the studio space I have is pretty large. Mm-hmm. I took one room. I took two rooms or two offices, tore down the wall to make a great big room, and had a stage built inside of it. My students can do acting like on a stage as well, because to me, that's the best teacher, is performing live. And most of these students coming in have no experience. Some do. I mean, I have some people come in with incredible amounts of experience, and I'll work with them on whatever level they're on. Get on a stage and do a monologue in front of other students is really good experience for them. And then I have another room that I have my animators work in. Chiefly right now, a girl named Gemma Brazil. She does most of my animation stuff. And we're animating like 2 or 3 cartoons right now. One of them is based on conversations I have at conventions, recordings, and we just animate those. But it's fun. There's a lot of things going on. Of course, this is also where I draw my comic books too. I have a private office that I draw in.
It's just a good workspace for you. So I was actually, it's funny because I've talked to Peter Kalamis and Cynthia Kranz, a lot of different people, and they all say the same thing. We're seeing a pattern here in that in order to become a great voice actor, you should try to become a great actor, and that working live is how important is it from your own experience? We're going to get to some of the stuff you did in a minute, but to be in front of, or maybe not in front of an audience, but to do actual quote on camera acting, how does that help with voice acting, like in your experience?
Well, any experience is going to translate, but I think that most of our best actors have come from the stage. That is, when you're on stage and you do this for many, many years, you're going to get a sense of timing of what makes people laugh and what makes people cry, because you've done that in real time. Recording booth, you don't have an audience. And even on a movie set, you don't really have an audience, because they're not going to try to laugh or anything, because they don't want to ruin your take.
Right.
Instinctively, how to move people emotionally. And the best way to do that is to get in front of people and do it. I always tell people, like, if you're in school, take theater classes. If you're not in school, most communities have a community theater. So track them down, audition, get a part, get on stage and see what it's like, to see if you really want to do this or not.
Yeah, it seems to be just a common thing. So, and that makes sense. I mean, you have to emote and things like that, because from what I understand, it's just 3 beeps, and you're talking to like somebody like a Raleigh Pickens or whoever's the audio engineer or the director. You're right. He's the only audience. That's it. There's not like a big group waiting for you outside.
Right. So you need to know how to say this in a way that's going to make people laugh or cry or whatever. And the only way to really be able to do that well is to have the experience under your belt.
Well, have you done a lot of I guess it's called pre-roll, or when you actually record the voice without, like, it's not for a dub, for a quote dub. It's like, for those who don't know, it's like when you record a voice for an original cartoon, when instead of you being alone in the booth, you're with a group. I've seen Ian Corlett do this and a few other actors, for like, American cartoons or whatever, where that's different though, because for anime, it's almost all like one person in the booth at a time. But for sometimes, original cartoons, you actually have that group there, you can play off each other. But that seems to be a rare thing nowadays.
It's called prelay.
Prelay. I said pre-roll. Prelay. Yes, sir.
When, yeah, you're right. It's when you're recording first and they animate to you.
Yeah, like Robin Williams for Aladdin.
But I have not done it in a group setting. Even the prelay I've done, it's always been me first or by myself. Sometimes other people record ahead of time so you can hear them, but generally it's just you in there saying the lines to your imagination.
Yeah, and
this is where your experience comes in, because you can imagine what it's like to act with another person who's not there.
You have to, and that's why you said in front of a crowd is a good way, because you can pretend that you are in front of a crowd. That's the game, essentially.
That's why the first 2 days of my workshop is focused solely on acting, so that when they get in a booth, they're much more comfortable acting.
How did you get into Elfquest? And I mean actually working on Elfquest, because I feel like as a young artist, you were inspired by it, and now you actually work on it. You were one of the artists, one of the big ones. How did you get that gig, if you don't mind me asking?
I had been published a few times before I was a voice actor. Then Funimation moved to Texas, and they had open auditions for Dragon Ball Z. So a friend of mine had auditioned, and she didn't get a part, but she told me, you really need to audition for this, because I was always doing funny voices in theater.
Are you talking about Michelle Irving?
You know Michelle Irving?
No, I just heard you talk about her before. I told you I did my homework.
Oh, really? Yeah. Michelle was a really good friend of mine from community theater. She and I actually taught theater together many years ago before I was on Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, I've never talked to her before, but I've heard you talk about her, and you said that she knew Sabbath, and that's kind of how you got the gig for Dragon Ball, right?
She was a tremendous actor. She's just a local actor who did community theater work, but she was our ingenue at the time. She was the female role actor for just about any play we did. She said, Sonny, you need to audition for this. So I did. And that's how I got into it. But we were asking about Elfquest.
Yes, I'll ask you about Dragon Ball here in a second, because I have a question about that. Elfquest.
It's tied together, though, because Dragon Ball quickly became the highest-rated animated show in American history.
Hell yeah.
Funimation sent me, Chris Sabat, Sean Schimmel, and Stephanie Nadolny to Comic-Con, our first signing. Now, I had been to Comic-Con as a comic book artist, right? And this is before manga was so big in this country. If you were drawing in black and white, you got snubbed a lot at conventions, right? Only the cool people would ever give it a shot. You have these guys coming over, flipping open your page just enough to see if it's in color or black and white, and they go, oh, that's in black and white. I don't read black and white.
Oh, boy.
And so, I'd spent a few years, really pushing hard and trying to get beyond the prejudices that I would see at Comic-Con. Well, now I'm coming to Comic-Con as a voice actor, and the lines are crazy long, right? The same people that were snubbing me just 5 years ago, right?
And so that's great.
Guys are now begging for my autograph, the people who were snubbing me before. But the first signing was at Funimation's booth. All the tables covered in merchandise, and there was no place for us to sign. But he went to the people next door to them and said, hey, could the Funimation voice actors sign in your booth when they get here? The booths out there are very expensive, right?
Right.
And so the guy who owned the booth, he said no, right? But his wife happened to be Wendy Pini, the creator of Elfquest, loved Dragon Ball Z.
Wow.
He said, yes, they can sign here. And we were just told, sit down here and start signing, because it's a huge line, and we're just trying to, do our best. We were. And then people kept saying Wendy Pini's name over and over. And I said, why do you keep saying Wendy Pini? And I turned and looked, and she's leaning over and she's waving. She says, hello. And I went, oh my God. And I just started fanboying all over her. I was like, I've been a fan of yours since I was in high school. Oh my God, you're so awesome. Well, I'm a fan of yours. And I said, shut up.
Respect.
I'm a fan of yours. And I said, you watch Dragon Ball Z? And she goes, yeah, I love it. She started drawing pictures of her characters and gave it to us as gifts through the weekend. Well, I went to my room and I drew a picture of her main character, Cutter, Krillin, Goku, Vegeta, and Gohan. Voice balloons so that each of the voice actors could write a personal thank you letter to them in the voice balloons for allowing us to sign in their booth. And she said, your Cutter's her main character, your Cutter is more on model than anybody we've ever had work for us. It's nice. I said, well, I've actually been published a few times. And she goes, draw for me?
My God.
I said, wait, trick question? Okay, hell yeah, I'll draw for you. We were all set up for me to draw for Elfquest. Started thinking about it, and I felt that my artwork had kind of hit a ceiling. And I've always wanted to study under a master. And she is definitely one of the great masters of comic art. I called her up and I said, hey, I'm happy to do this for you. I'm honored, actually, but change the terms. And she said, you want more money? And I went, no. Money's fine. I want to study under you. Okay. Well, you know what that means? I said, what? She said, it means it will be tied together forever. I said, I'm down with that.
It's like a marriage except without the lawyers, essentially, right?
It really is. It's a marriage of honor is what it is.
Right. Wow. So, and that's, to me, that's very inspirational to artists out there, you know, who want to make it, because you never know. Like I always tell people, man, you never know. You could publish a piece of art and it might not get noticed for months or a year. And then one day you get noticed. It's crazy how life is sometimes.
And really, conventions are a really good place to do that. Almost every job I've gotten in comics is because of somebody I met at a convention. And usually it's because I had a table and I was selling my comics there, and people said, oh, I really like this. Do you have anything else that you want published, you know? So, yeah, it's good. And that's a good rule of thumb, because you want to be prepared. You don't know when opportunity will knock, but it will. And if you're ready when it knocks, then you've got an in. At that moment, sit for the end. And I moved out to California. I worked in her studio for a year. Greatest learning experience of my life. I think I learned more in that year than I did 10 years by myself.
So wait, when you were out there, were you still flying back to Dallas to do Dragon Ball, or was this in between Dragon Ball?
When Wendy asked me to move to her studio, I said, I can't do that, Wendy. Why don't you just fly back once a month? So I went, yeah, why don't I? You know, I'd never thought that large before. I thought, you know, just the parameters of the state that I live in.
Right.
And I'll fly back and I'll pay for it on my own dime. Because I also didn't want to lose Krillin, because it was such a big show and I didn't want to, you know, lose that. I was told later that they were ready to replace me.
Oh, boy. Was that a Barry Watson call?
I was the first one to do this, so they didn't believe that I would come back. But it was worth it to me to keep that on my resume. I did come back. And so they got confidence that I would come back. Lots of voice actors started doing that. They started flying back and forth to LA and everything. But I was the first one to do it. And it was great, because at first it taught me how to expand my horizons more than just being, you know, locally minded. But also, again, learning from Wendy in her studio, I would draw a page. She would look at the page. She would say, this works, this doesn't work. And she'd tell me why.
That's perfect.
I mean, like, some of the stuff, there was so much information that I didn't process it till like 5-10 years later. Sometimes I would just, like 10 years afterward, I'd be going, oh, right, she said do this, you know. After I quit, after I drew the 2 stories for her, some stuff for Tokyo Pop, I would hear her voice in my head in me.
Wow. That's a good mentor, man.
And she's also my best friend. She, wife and I had been together for, well, now 16 years. But after 13 years, we decided to finally get married. But and I started getting depressed because I really didn't have like close guy friends, you know. And she said, Wendy is your best man. Right. So I called her up and I asked her if she'd be the best man. And she said, Sonny, I'll even wear a tuxedo.
That's great. That is wonderful.
Became my best man. It was amazing.
That is wonderful, dude. I have a smile on my face. I love that story, and because and at the end of the day, it worked out for you because you got to do Elfquest and Dragon Ball. You made a sacrifice for a year because nobody likes to get on a flight a lot. Like, I mean, I just certainly don't, but you know, it's tedious. The airport, you know, 2 a.m, so you get home sometimes and you're tired. It's not the funnest life ever, but you had to do it.
Expense, you know, it's a monthly expense that most people would be afraid to take on.
Right. Well, it's a tax write-off too, so there is that.
Luckily, though, about 6 months I was out there, I found out that there was a studio auditioning for anime. It was called I'm Gonna Be an Angel, I think is what it's called. I auditioned for it. They gave me 4 roles in the show, which told me that LA didn't have any talent at that time because as in Texas, I would not be given 4 lead roles, you know, maybe 1, but not 4. And they paid me like twice what I was making at Funimation, and they apologized for it. They said, I know you're used to making more. And I said, that's okay. I've worked for less. That's cool. And
that's great.
They paid by, you know, like they would schedule me for 9 hours, right? Or something like that. And they would pay me the 9 hours no matter how fast I got it done. Hours done in 3. So I would be getting bank up there. And so finally it paid off.
Right. No, I mean, it sounds like, either way it worked out. It worked out for you. So
great.
So now you were a theater actor. You dropped out of several colleges, as that's according to you. Then you did semi-pro theater in Dallas. Michelle Irving got you the gig with Chris Sabat. So did you audition specifically for Krillin or for a different character, and you happened to land that role?
I auditioned for all the main characters, and I was second for choice for many of them, I was told later. But Krillin was weird because that had all of the lines from different characters. Mm-hmm. And since we were trying, the Ocean Group in Canada was the first to record this, right?
Yes. I was going to ask you about that, but yeah.
Yeah, we were told to try to imitate them.
Yeah, it's weird. You took over from Terry Clayson, but right? Or it's Clausen? Did I say his name wrong?
Clayson. It's Clausen.
Oh, it's Clausen. Okay, my bad. I've never talked to him before. So you took over from Terry, but it's interesting because they told you to mimic the original voices, but I never felt like your Krillin was like his. Like I always felt like
because it wasn't.
Yeah.
What happened was because I just could totally nail that voice, and I think it was like this. It sounded really close to the Team 4-Star version.
That's the one. That's the one. Yes, that's Terry.
And I could do Terry's voice pretty well. After I got cast in the show, I found out there was a manga, right? And I told you I'm a huge comic book fan.
I was going to ask you about that too, but yeah.
And my head did not sound like Terry Clausen's voice, but I was told to sound like Terry Clausen, so that's what I did. Barry Watson said, hey, that sounds just like Terry Clausen, but I hate that voice. And I was like, oh, crap, he's going to replace me. Do other voices. He goes, I know. I saw your audition. You were all over the map. And he says, do you have any other voice? And I said, what do you have in mind? He said, well, Krillin's a midget. He was not politically correct.
Old cowboy.
He's the world's strongest human being. And he goes, the voice I had in my head from reading the manga sounded a lot like Popeye on helium. What about like Popeye on helium? He goes, what would that sound like? I said, I don't know, something like this. Come on, guys, let's go.
That's perfect. Yeah. I never noticed it sounded like Popeye from Helium or Popeye with Helium. I never picked up on that.
I wasn't trying to be Popeye on Helium, but the voice I heard in my head sounded like a higher pitched Popeye. I was like, can I reproduce that? And I started going, yeah, it's something like this. This is what I'm hearing, right? So when I showed that, he loved it, and then we kept it. So I was the first person to make that voice the way I wanted to do it, because everyone else had to sound like the Canadian.
Right.
As the season progressed, you watch from the beginning to the season to the end of the first season, and definitely in the second season, actors made those characters more their own.
Yes,
they may have
for sure
with the Canadian voice, but then they went way beyond it.
Sabat tried to sound like the Brian Drummond Vegeta, but then as you progress through season 4, season 5, you hear the Sabat Vegeta, the royal king, or whatever, as opposed to the Brian Drummond.
Yeah, between season 3 and 5, there was definitely a major change in those characters, and it's good. I think it's foolish to try to make people sound like somebody else who did the voice, because. Right, if you're doing the play Harvey, which was James Stewart did that voice, the character. Try to sound like James Stewart in a play called Harvey, people would just laugh you off the stage. It's like you're supposed to make this your own, man.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, later on, you guys went back to redub seasons 1 and 2, so then you could just start from scratch. And now, if somebody buys Dragon Ball Z on Blu-ray or DVD and they want to hear the dub, they're not going to get the Ocean dub unless they get the Rock the Dragon set. So you've got the whole sort of spectrum covered at this point. Years later, it was all done.
20 years later, so a lot of people don't even remember that there was a recording done in Canada.
Yeah, and then they went back and it's funny because they went back and finished Dragon Ball Z and they used Funimation scripts. I don't know how that happened because I asked Sabat when I interviewed him, and I don't think Sean even knows, but somehow the Ocean dub got Funimation scripts word for word.
Well, you know what I bet happened? Dawson stayed. He was still in Canada, but he stayed on as a script writer.
I remember hearing that. I was going to ask you about that.
So maybe he just gave them the scripts he wrote.
That would make the most sense because he went back to do Krillin anyways. He did all your lines, which you did his lines. He did your lines. It's kind of funny. Afterwards, so do you and him still talk? Like, did you guys ever run into each other?
I've never met him. Because he was in Canada, and we would just get his scripts through the mail, and then we would just act off of his scripts. So I never met him. I would like to. It'd be kind of interesting to see the Krillin from Canada. But I've also never met any of my Japanese counterparts either.
It's crazy because Krillin is voiced by Mayumi Tanaka in the Japanese version, who also voices Luffy in One Piece. And you also play Usopp. I think it's Usopp in One Piece. And no, it's just kind of funny. She's a mainstream actress over there. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's so weird too. Like in the Resurrection F movie, Krillin's phone is the One Piece theme.
That was an Easter egg. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, well, it still works with me doing it since I play Usopp.
No, it still works.
I what we should do though. We should change it to the Sniper King song for his ringtone, but they didn't want to do it.
A Toei probably wouldn't have wanted that. So
that would have been a lot of hoops to go through to make that happen.
Yeah,
probably worth it in the end.
So later, you auditioned for Toonami Tom. What's the story of you working for Cartoon Network as Toonami Tom? That's one I definitely want to know about.
I started playing Krillin. And the Toonami guys were trying to find this character. They didn't know what they wanted at all. And they went to all the studios that were sending in cartoons, and they came to Funimation and said, we want to hear Chris Sabat, we want to hear Linda Chambers, and we want to hear Sonny Strait for this part. Obviously, they had no idea what they wanted. With the three of us, we did not find three more different approaches to voice acting.
Right.
Give us a silent recording, a video of Toonami Tom walking around so we could see what he looked like, but they gave us no instruction, nothing at all. But it's a robot, so we were practicing robot voices and things like that, right?
Right.
We had no idea what they wanted. We went to audition. This is rare that you can hear other people auditioning, but we could hear in the lobby auditioning, and so I heard, and I was the last to go. And I was listening to what they were asking for. And by the time they got to me, I kind of figured out what they were really looking for because they didn't really know. But I thought they're looking for a punk, They're looking for some punk who's just like thinks he's the coolest thing in the world and just smooth talking punk. And they told each of them, look, we don't want a robot voice. We want something more laid back. So I got in there and I said, do you mean to tell me I spent the entire weekend working on this great robot voice and you don't even want to hear it? And they went, well, I guess we could hear it. And I said, Okay, it's something like this. I am Toonami Tom. What do you think? And they said, that sucks. And I said, I know. What is it that you're really looking for? And they said, you know what we're looking for, what you're doing right now. And I said, I thought that's what you were looking for. And so they cast me, which was a great gig for a while. But I lost that gig to technical issues. It was the worst way to lose a gig. To get a director who's in Georgia, it required what was called a digital patch system. Mm-hmm. And at that time, there was only one studio in Dallas that could do that. And it took an hour to set this up. The owner of the studio, the local studio we went to, he was really good about it. He would get there an hour before we would and set it up. So the time I arrived, I was ready to go and the director was set on the line and we could just start recording. And bear in mind, I was making $400 an hour at this point. So he gave it to his assistant. Well, his assistant was a bit slower, and he would wait until I got there and the directors were ready online to set it up. So we were sitting there an hour in the booth waiting for this thing to be set up. The director said, look, I can't do this anymore. Went to LA where people had their shit together and found Steve Bloom. And Steve Bloom did a great impression of me.
Right.
The first couple of lines, I thought I did them. And I was like, wait, that's not me. That's somebody else. And since Toonami Tom was so close to my regular voice, it was like Steve Bloom was doing an impression of me. Bizarre.
Yeah. He had to follow you.
But
and for those who don't know, Steve Bloom was in Dragon Ball. He voiced Goku in the Dragon Ball GT Final Bout video game. His only Dragon Ball contribution was that one video game.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's crazy because... go ahead, I'm sorry.
I love Steve Bloom.
No, it's go ahead. We're talking over each other. Go ahead. Sorry.
Made Toonami Tom his own, and which is what I would have done too.
No, you did. I mean, you were the first one. But it's crazy just because, like, that GT Final Bout game has so many great actors that... and so many great voices that were, strangely enough, like, okay, if you listen to Frieza from that 97 game, it doesn't sound like Linda Young, or Linda Chambers, whatever you want to call her, or Pauline Newstone. It sounds like Chris Ayres, but Chris Ayres wouldn't do Frieza until 2010. So it's almost like they were sort of ahead of their time in a way, and in a weird way. And the voices were weird in that game anyways.
It was probably strange for people when it was not the original cast.
It wasn't the Canadians and it wasn't you guys. It was some random... I got to find out about that. That's one story that I never really dug into, is where that whole thing happened.
It all depends on who's licensing the product and who's connected with who. Funimation tends to get most of the things Dragon Ball Z related. Like I recently had to play Elmer Fudd in a video game. I mean, to do one line, but it was official, and I was like, wow, I did Elmer Fudd. That's amazing.
Hey, even if it's one line, you did Elmer Fudd, a character that's been around for, 100 years? I mean, almost, right?
And my first voice acting mentor, besides my father, not mentor, the guy I looked up the most was Mel Blanc, who created the voice for Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. So to play Elmer Fudd, even for a second, was just beyond my wildest dreams of childhood.
Yeah, no, that's... And you had a good career.
Hey, someday, Sonny, you'll get to do one line officially as Elmer Fudd. I would have not have believed it, you know?
You've had a crazy career. So let's talk about Bardock, okay? Did you audition for Bardock? I know that Bardock was after season 3. Did you audition for him, or they just choose you? Did Barry or whoever say you're the one?
It wasn't Barry. It was who was it? It'll come to me in a minute. But it's somebody who had directed me before, and I think I had played some soldiers or something, or some general that had a tough barking voice. They decided that I could do it. And back then, we didn't have a lot of actors. You know, we had like 20, I think. And so we were all used a lot. So he cast me in this role, and he said, your deepest voice. And here, I'm supposed to be Sean Schimmel's dad.
Right.
Schimmel doesn't talk with a deep voice, but so I said, okay, well, what we're going to have to do is you're going to have me record first thing in the morning when my voice is the lowest. And it was cool. And it was a fun show. I wish I could re-record that whole thing.
Yeah,
because I was so green back then.
the script for that special wasn't the best. I mean, needless to
Oh,
say.
well, none of the scripts were back then, but compared to what was out there, it was state of the art, because it was just that was the level of quality that was in the industry at the time, because it was still in its infancy back then. Sabat's pointed this out that they have to be talented because the competition now is much more fierce. So we started getting writers in who were just amazing. Mm-hmm. So it changed. Like J. Michael Tatum is an amazing writer. He wrote a Resurrection F movie, which is one of the best written movies we've done. But there are many writers now that have come up. But back then, it was still kind of rough.
Yeah, and back then, you guys didn't really have all the materials either, because there were a lot of assumptions that were made. Like for example, even before you came in to do Bardock, there was a line in the Ocean dub where Vegeta says that Goku's father was a brilliant scientist. It became a meme, and I guess the writers didn't get the materials from Toei in time, so they just made stuff up.
And a lot of times our translations were terrible back then. Now we have people who grow up wanting to be able to translate Japanese, Back then, it was hard to find somebody who could do a good translation, So a lot of times when I was writing at Funimation in those early days, to show like 3 times with the translation just to figure out what the hell's going on,
Right. So you also said though that you were reading the manga. So as a director or even as an actor,
helped a lot.
Yeah, I was going to ask how much that helped. Yeah.
Because then you're able to keep, because those had better translations than what we were getting, and usually the manga was the same as the anime and the story was basically the same. They honor the manga, which is amazing, because in our country we like to take liberties with the original comic book writers do when they make a movie or whatever.
Right.
But the name I was struggling for was John Bergmeyer. John Bergmeyer directed. He's the voice of Tien.
That's right, Linda Young's son.
Yeah, and he became the head writer later at Funimation. He was trying directing, and he directed that the Bardock movie. When he became the head writer, and I went to him and I said, "Hey, yeah, I'd like to become a writer here too, to make some extra money. Are you qualified?" And I said, "I think I'm the only one qualified." He said, "What?" And I said, "Well, I have professional comic books that I have published, and that I wrote." And he goes, "You know what? You are the only one qualified."
But I mean, it was a different era back then, though. Right? I feel like back then it was kind of like the Wild West, compared to now.
It totally was, and it's amazing that we survived it.
I was gonna say, how do you feel about Toriyama's rewriting / retconning of Bardock? He went from being this guy who never really gave a damn about anybody but his team to this softer kind of family man who loves his son, became Jor-El, I guess, in many ways. I mean, as a comic book fan, how do you as an actor feel about that choice? And did that make your approach to Bardock during Broly different than the original? And also, did you ever read Dragon Ball Minus where the original retcon happened?
I have. And the thing was, as an actor, it was a great challenge, although it was almost too much of a challenge at first. And luckily, Chris gave me the script ahead of time, said, go ahead and read this and get an idea of it, and to practice something new, because this is a different kind of character.
Yeah.
And he's basically the same, but you play the video games. Bardock says over and over, "I'm going to change the future."
Yep.
The way I look at it, Bardock is the most powerful Saiyan of all, because not only did he change his future, the future of the entire franchise, and affected this reality. In the last movie, he's like he wished he had lived at the end of the first movie. He's actually more focused on his family and everything, which is what you could tell. That's who he wished he had been.
Right.
Destroyed in the early movie. It's almost like he got his wish after all these years.
It's weird too, because Bardock is the only character in Dragon Ball that the anime staff came up with first before Toriyama put him in the manga. Because they came out with that special in October of 90, and I'm pretty sure he didn't appear in the manga until early 91. I might have my dates mixed up, but he drew the character for Toei, but they wrote that Bardock special. That wasn't even Toriyama, and he even said he loved it. He loved that special, but yet when he came back to do his version, I guess you can say, or whatever, it was totally different. So it makes me wonder with something like Game of Thrones. People complained about that Game of Thrones finale. So whenever R.R. Martin actually gets to that book, I think it's going to be totally different. He's going to change everything because, you know what I mean? The complaints, he knows about them. So
I think what happened with that was he said so. He said that he gave them, hasn't got there yet, but he gave them his notes about where it's going. They just didn't have the budget to go on to another season, or they couldn't keep the people together. So they just crammed all of his notes into one season.
Yeah, that was a complete mess. At least with Broly, though, you had this great animation. I mean, that was such a phenomenal movie. And people were so foolish to think that's the end of Dragon Ball when it's not. It's actually a new beginning because Toriyama chose Shintani and his designs as a rebirth. So when Super does return, it's going to look maybe not as good as that movie because that movie has a bigger budget, but it's going to look like that. It's going to have that clean kind of look to it. And I'm very excited for that, for sure. And I don't know if you're going to be doing Bardock again because I don't know if there's any more story to tell, but Krillin will be back. So you got work coming soon at some point.
You know, one thing I was thinking the other day is like power levels have gone way, way up. And you know, it's kind of hard to measure power levels in a show like Dragon Ball Z, but we do know for a fact that Android 18 could mop the floor with Super Saiyan 1s.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, of course.
Back then, Krillin just defeats someone that defeated 18. Krillin now must be at least Super Saiyan 1 level in skill.
There's an argument that he actually got there in the Buu saga. I can't really say because the power scaling gets wackier and wackier, but there's an argument to be made for that. Plus, don't forget, 17 got as strong as Super Saiyan Blue. I mean, it just, they have to scale people up, I guess, to make it legitimately, to make people compete with other universes or whatever. I mean, it's just, people get mad at these explanations, but they do that all the time in comics. Like, hasn't Superman been like...
power scaling stuff though. I mean, we didn't call it power scaling when I was a kid, but we still talked about it. You know, who's going to win in a fight and based on what they have done, the stats that they have and stuff like that. And I actually caused a little bit of a commotion on Twitter once by saying that Krillin could mop the floor with all of the Marvel universe.
It's funny. It's funny though, because I don't think he could, even though I know you were messing around, but Krillin in early Dragon Ball Z, late Dragon Ball, had the power to destroy the Earth. He had that power. He never used it, but he had that power. And people have a hard time accepting that people like Krillin and Yamcha are strong enough to do that. They just don't do it, but they can do it, you know?
That's what I've also said. It bothers you that I say that Krillin could do this? I think Yamcha could do it. So that really pisses people off. The comic book version of, like, especially like the Hulk, you know, as long as he just keeps getting angry, he's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. I always say Krillin's biggest defense against the Hulk would be to use his sense of humor. Tiny men make Hulk laugh, and they will calm him down. You know, okay, big guy, the sun's setting, you know, so relax, you know, and he would calm down. But that would be his best weapon against the Hulk because he would start off technically stronger than the Hulk when he first hulks out. Hulk would just get stronger and stronger and stronger, and eventually Krillin would get tired because he is human. But here's my question.
Yeah.
This is to your audience.
Okay.
Krillin cannot become a Super Saiyan, obviously, because he's not a Saiyan.
Yeah, but that was a rumor for years that he could, even though he can't, yeah.
But what he probably could do if he worked at it long and hard enough is Ultra Instinct.
Not only can he do it, but Master Roshi demonstrated that he had a pseudo version of it in the manga. So if Master Roshi can do something similar, they all can. No, I've said that from the beginning. Ultra Instinct is not a Saiyan transformation. Anybody can do it. It's just, can you do it? You know, it takes a while to pick up on that because Goku had to learn from Whis, and not everybody's trained with Whis, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But I wonder if they would try that. You know, see if they can get Krillin to do an Ultra Instinct because I think he could probably do it. He is probably the ultimate skill. It's the only thing that keeps him alive is his skill level is so high.
I mean, he is the strongest human. Toriyama himself said it during the Resurrection F pamphlet that came out. He straight up said that Krillin is the strongest human. Now, obviously, we're not including Oob because Oob is a reincarnation of Majin Buu and he came after Resurrection F. But still, like, of the natural born human beings, he's the strongest one. So that's impressive in itself.
But when it comes to Ultra Instinct, it has nothing to do with your strength, really. It's more about your skill level. You know, you're just letting go and this force of Ultra Instinct takes over. Right?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Stronger, you're just the best at martial arts, you know, you're like a god of martial arts. And Krillin's strength, even if he's the strongest human being, and you know there is debate on that, but I think he probably is, since Toriyama said he was. Regardless, it doesn't matter if you're the strongest human when all you hang around with is gods.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
No way you can match the god's strength.
Did you ever try to audition for Kid Krillin in Dragon Ball? I know Laurie Steele ended up doing it, but did you ever try?
Oh, and it wasn't even on the table because back then it was just, you know, anytime we had kids, we had women play those parts.
Okay, that makes sense.
They got Laurie Steele, but when I first heard her, I was like, oh my God, that sounds exactly like a kid version of what I'm doing.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's why I was thinking that you would be perfect to do it yourself. But I mean, I see why they got her to do it.
I mean, I guess if they pitched it up or whatever, but I think it sounds more natural coming out of her than if I was trying to talk really high like this. You know, you'll be very pinched. But what's weird, though, I talked to her about that, and I said, man, you know that voice. I mean, it sounds like what I think the voice I do now would sound like as a kid. And she said, well, the weird thing is I never heard your voice.
That's crazy.
She said, they just told me to do something nasal and scratchy. And that's what I came up with. And I said, it's perfect. It sounds just like what I thought what Krillin would sound like as a kid.
You could have told her do Popeye on Helium as a kid. There you go.
That should have been her. Yeah. But I don't think she was cast by Barry. I think she was cast by someone else.
Yeah, that was after because Dragon Ball's dub, I think, had less script changes, but and actually we're gonna get to that here in a minute. The next question I have is about that. It was more censored, and actually we're gonna talk about that here because you played General Blue in Dragon Ball.
Oh yes, I did.
Yes, I love that character. Now, a little bit of a controversial question here. I consider myself a Dragon Ball purist, and a lot of purists don't like just story dub changes. Sometimes you have to change it to make the mouth flaps and you know stuff like that, but story changes aren't usually a good idea and they're not really necessary to a lot of fans. But there's one
Yeah, I was gonna say but
yeah, there's one dub change that I have always agreed with, and maybe you already know what I'm gonna say, but I have to preface this to the audience because they might not know. So just letting people know what's going on. So there's a scene with General Blue in the anime where, and this is only in the anime, it's not in the manga, it's not anything Toriyama wrote, it's Toei Animation of Japan. It was in Dragon Ball episode 56, and I'm doing this all based off of memory. I think it was written by Toshiki Inoue, I think it's who it was. And basically, if I remember correctly, I think that was the writer, and what happens is Blue's car breaks down, and the car gets fixed by Obochaman, who's an android that resembles a little boy. And he looks at the little boy, and he has these weird, lustful eyes, and he says the kid is my type, and tries to kiss him. Now, in the manga, Blue was always portrayed as being gay. He's a gay character, and Toriyama made jokes about his gayness in the 80s. And we have to remember, this is the mid-80s, you know, movies like Police Academy and, you know, House Party. They had these... You can't judge.
Go-to foil, which was sad, but that was certainly the way it was back then.
That's the way it was. But in the anime, they added this aspect to his character where he's attracted to children and completely edited out of the dub, and rightfully so in my opinion, because that's one thing I hate about that anime Japanese version is they added that in there. Were you there for these meetings? What were your memories of this whole thing?
No. I was not there for the meetings, but Chris had told me what had happened. Original, yeah. He said, this is what happens in the original. We're not doing that. You're going to just pretend it's some kid that looks like your long lost brother, and you're excited to see him.
Okay.
Not for that. I don't want to be playing the first pedophile from Funimation.
Exactly, dude. That's why I asked you, man, because I had a feeling you knew this story, because I remember arguing with some people who are also purists. No, they shouldn't change anything. And I'm like, no, dude, you don't want to go with this. It's not even honoring Toriyama.
Yeah. Certain legal restrictions may apply here.
Well, yeah, and like I said, it wasn't even the manga. In the manga, that scene never even happened. So
the character, and I'll base my voice on the physicality of the character as well as the history of that character. On Prison School, a show that kind of skirts the line, but there's a character named Andre, and a lot of people accuse me of trying to sound like Smeagol, right? But that was the furthest thing from my mind. He's a heavy-set guy. Looks like he's about 400 pounds. And he has a giant head with a tiny face in the middle of this giant head, right? I'm thinking, well, if you are that heavy, your soul will be very pursed and breathless.
It does sound like Smeagol, though.
Exactly. It does sound like Smeagol, but that was not my intention. My intention was coming up with a voice that suits that physicality.
Right.
Like, any character I look at, I go, how would I sound if I had that face or that body? And go from there. And then pepper in his history, like is he from England or is he from wherever,
Yeah, well, when it comes to Blue, he was a pretty ripped dude. I mean, he was, in very good shape. And for those who don't know, this is a quick little factoid. Toriyama based that character off of this guy named Ernst Röhm, who was an openly gay friend of Adolf Hitler. Because the Red Ribbon Army is supposed to be a parody of the Nazis and the Russians. So for those who don't know, that's where the original thing came from.
Character just gets better and better. So he's a Nazi pedophile.
I hope I'm not making you feel uncomfortable here.
No, not at all. That's funny, though.
At least you have that on your resume.
It's not the only time I played a Nazi, though.
Right. Well, actually, I wanted to ask you something about Kai. So when you came back for Kai, how did you approach that project? Because it's Z recut. You can redo some lines, better script, and now you're doing it in order, start to finish. So did you approach that, differently? How was that kind of mentality like during that time?
We did approach it differently because luckily we were also now more seasoned. It was a dream come true for us because it was basically saying, that how crappy you were in the first couple of seasons? Now you get a chance to do it again with the experience you have. And Chris Sabat did something really cool on that one. Because by that time, many of us have already directed at Funimation.
That's great.
So I got to direct myself as Krillin episode. So I got to say it exactly the way I wanted to say it. I could change the lines to suit it any way I wanted to. And then, I was really connected to Krillin as a character. But when I got to direct myself doing those lines, we became one at that point.
That's like a dream come true that they gave you that kind of trust,
Well, we had already proven ourselves at Funimation for years as directors. And so he said, well, why don't you guys direct yourself? So it was amazing.
Yeah, and you know the outcome. Now, why did you guys go from Destructo Disc to Kienzan and Kai and then change it back? I never understood that because you said Kienzan and I'm over here like pulling my hair out and saying, wait, did they just use the Japanese name? I'm over here excited because I'm like, okay, Kai is pure or whatever.
Because Kai, we got to do it the way we wanted to do it.
Right.
We need to do this as pure as possible, including the Japanese for the attacks and stuff. And I was like, that's amazing. So, yeah, we got to do it for that. But then when we go back to, the movies and Super, then there's a lot more pressure and a lot more merchandising involved and stuff like that. So we had to go back to the way we were, with Destructo Disc and stuff like that. But it was a dream period for us as far as just acting because we could actually do this the way we really wanted to do it.
I just find it funny, though, that people vociferously defend that Z-dub. And obviously, if the Z-dub is your big break as an actor, you're always going to have a soft spot for it. But I've talked to so many actors like yourself, Chris Rager. A lot of them, they listen to it and they're like, oh, it's not me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like when you watch your school play when you're a kid and you're like, no, I could have done that better. You know, that kind of thing.
That's exactly what it feels like. It feels embarrassing to hear it. But, you know, we all start somewhere, but the thing is that's because of nostalgia, you know, and at the time it was the best thing going. So you just have to put it in historical context. So when they saw these other cartoons and then they saw what we were doing, they were like, oh, this is amazing. Obviously got better with experience. And so Kai is supremely better than Dragon Ball Z. But you're going to be in the camp of where your nostalgia lies, you know?
No, I'm with you. And I'm not saying that's a bad opinion or anything like that. I'm just saying that it's interesting because people who actually worked on Kai, because I didn't even know the story about you being able to direct yourself, because I can imagine how liberating that is. So the experience of doing Kai was probably better. Plus, I heard that Z was very rushed and Kai wasn't that rushed. Like with Z, you had to like cram time in because you had a lot of stuff to do. But with Kai, it was a lot less. Is that accurate? Less episodes too.
That wasn't my experience, but it might have been because, you know, I wasn't directing when we first did Dragon Ball Z. I eventually started directing Dragon Ball Z, but generally it takes about a week to do an episode, no matter what you're doing. It's always been that way. We get a week to do an episode. Some episodes, you know, you wish you had 2 weeks because there's maybe, you know, like 150 extras on that episode or something.
Yeah.
You're going to go a week per episode, and it's always been that way. I remember when we started doing the broadcast dubs, and people are going, oh, they're rushing them through, trying to get them done in a week. I'm like, no, it's always been a week. Look at that as a sneak preview of what the final version is going to be.
Yeah.
Blu-ray.
And for those who don't know, the broadcast dub is the Toonami version, not the Blu-ray version, just to clarify for those who don't know.
And then what we do in the Blu-ray is we go back and tighten up everything that we might have missed or whatever because we were trying to get it done at that time. Or sometimes, like, if it has to be done that week, they're sick and they can't record. So, like, we'll get somebody to do a voice match just for that week. And then when we finally do the final version, we'll bring the actor back in and do it in pickups.
Yeah, which is literally what happened with Chris Ayres. Chris Ayres, Damon did him for a while because he's obviously ill, and then he had to come in and do the Blu-ray. But I think with Chris Ayres, though, he finished before everybody else because he had a lot more studio time because of his whole, you know, he has that he has his illness. So he went in and finished a lot of the episodes ahead of time. Because, you know, because correct me if I'm wrong, but don't you usually go in there and record like multiple lines? Like if the anime's already done airing and there's no simuldub, don't you go in and record? Like, for example, you'll do like 5 episodes of Krillin's lines. Like, do you guys not do that?
We do.
Yeah, just to make it easy.
We do. But like with broadcast dubs, it's different though, because a lot of times we only get 1 episode at a time.
That's crazy. That's crazy crunching.
Yeah. A lot of times you don't know what's happening. You know, like you could find out later. It's like, oh my God, that was supposed to be a woman the whole time. You know,
and here I am thinking that things were different than how they were back in the day, but they're not that different.
No, things again. But again, like I said, when we finally put the final release in, everything is corrected and stuff. But it's kind of cool though to be able to put something out almost simultaneously with the Japanese version.
It's funny.
What it is, they're more likely to appreciate when we actually do a good job.
I find it very funny though that it's just my own perspective, being somebody from the outside looking in. I've never worked in the studio like you have, but I followed the series since '94. It's just funny to me that people nowadays, not everyone, but a lot of people complain about certain dub changes in Dragon Ball Super and they compare it to Z. But what's funny is those same people are the ones that are quick to defend Z. They'll sit there and they'll complain about Hit saying time to make the donuts, but they will sit there and defend things like in the old dub when Goku said, "Al, it's a good nightmare to you," and these totally different. It's very interesting that it's whatever's imprinted onto you, but people kind of become these weird kind of, not hypocrites, but they kind of contradict themselves because To me, the super dub is so much better than the old Z dub. Just my opinion, because everybody, like you said, is seasoned. You've got a big crop of actors now who know what they're doing, and you have Raleigh there, who was not there in the original Z dub, and everybody loves that guy. So there's just, I feel like it's so much better now. You know, yeah, there's one or two lines that are kind of weird, but it's not worth saying the dub is bad at all. And luckily, it's a very small number of people, because I think the super dub is great, and the Broly dub was fantastic. I mean, that was some of the best work I think that you guys have ever done. Is the three movies, Broly, Resurrection F, and Battle of Gods, were all fantastic.
Oh, thank you, and I have to agree. I really think that everybody brought their A game to Broly, especially. But we were all excited to be doing movies that were going to go in the cinema. But when we got to do Broly, we're like, "Oh, this is cool. You know, this is really good." And so we all brought our A game for that.
Yeah, no, Toriyama and Toei. Oh, go ahead.
We're living in strange times where people can come so quickly. Like that nowadays, they'll totally slam a new project based on a 30-second promo. What did you think of it after you saw it? Oh, I didn't see it. I saw the preview and said, that's it. I'm not going to watch it. It's terrible. Like some of the shows, amazing shows I was on, were panned so hard before they came out. And then after they came out, people loved them. But I'm like, where are those critics now? You know, it seems like now that they came out, they would have all this fodder to just attack. But it's like they don't watch it. They just watch it. They watch the preview, and then they make their criticism based on that and move on.
That's the internet. I mean, they announced female Thor at San Diego Comic-Con. People are already shitting on that movie when it hasn't even come out yet. It won't come out for. What if it's a good movie? People are like, oh no,
that's canon. That happened in the comics already.
I know. I don't get it.
The Mary Jane character here. This was actually something that's canon. Yeah. And it's like a story that people really loved, and it's a great story. If they stick to the comic book version, it's going to be very moving.
Right?
So it's so funny, though. It's like, oh, well, they got a little Mary Jane over here, blah, blah, blah. It's like, they're ruining Thor now, blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, you just saw a preview. And now you're reacting.
We don't even have, sir, we don't even have a trailer for that movie out yet, and people are crapping on it. Just because it's a woman playing Thor, it's like, okay. And I know that some people didn't like the comic book version of the story, but that's okay because it's a movie. It's not the same thing. So
weird, too, that we live in this time of, hashtag Me Too movements and stuff like that. And yet,
cancel culture.
The vitriol and the anger towards women is worse than it's ever been.
Well, it's like a battle now. It's like you've got the Me Too's and then you've got the other side who are like, I don't even know what you would describe. I don't want to use the word incel because that's disrespectful because they're not all like that. But we've got this clash where they're fighting with each other and it's like, it's just entertainment. But I mean, I see where they're coming from. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, when it comes to like a movie, wait for it to come out. What's that?
They're coming from, and where they're both coming from is this place of humanity, right? And where nothing is perfect, okay? Mm-hmm. But when your side says this, you can easily find something on another side that is wrong because they're all imperfect. Everyone is imperfect. But nowadays, your imperfections means you should be canceled, And it's a really weird time we're living in.
Yeah, it's social media has. I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole other.
If somebody is like taking advantage of people or raping or whatever, whatever the thing that happens, yeah, that's an extreme case. But we are so at each other's throats. Democrats, Republicans, it's all. Everyone has to pick a side all the time, and it's so ridiculous. I'm like, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, and I've voted both in the past, and I voted independent as well.
Right.
But I just see like family members just tearing each other's throats out. People that just 5 years ago loving at family reunions and stuff like that, and now they're at each other's throats, and it breaks my heart. Yeah. And I'm like, why are you people worshiping political parties? What is wrong with you?
Well, it's the same thing like when there are certain situations in the anime fandom going on with certain individuals, and I choose to stay neutral because I don't trust anybody. Same thing with the politics. I don't trust any of them. You know what I mean? Like, I just stick to myself, and whoever looks the best and sounds the best, think about it. I think about it more.
Why do you have to pick a side? That's ridiculous that you're forced to pick sides.
Yeah. It's
what if I just take in things through my own filter and decide what I think the universe is. As long as I'm not hurting anybody, I don't have to pick a side.
I'm exactly the same way.
For days, I just don't get it. And I hope, because I'm hearing a lot more people talk this way, so I hope that it's eventually imploding and eventually people are going to get sick of this bullshit and just stop.
I think the internet magnifies it. It's probably not that bad in the real world. Couple more questions.
Different websites, though, seem to encourage it. Like Twitter.
Yeah.
You put something on Twitter, it's there. If somebody sees it, they're going to capture it, and it's gone for you. They've got you for good on this line. So you've got to be very careful what you say.
And not just that. A lot of times, what you said is something from years ago, like the James Gunn situation. He made a joke 10 years ago and lost his job for it. Come on,
And a lot of people have been facing this stuff that they said 10 years ago or whatever. A lot, and you don't know context that was set in. You don't know if it was a joke or an obvious joke, or the time at the time he said it, it might have been a perfectly politically correct joke to say.
Right. Like Toriyama doing the turning blue into a gay person. I mean, that was in the 80s. You can't get mad at him now.
Well, you can, though.
You can, but I'm saying there's no point holding a grudge against a man who did something 40 years ago that isn't even, he didn't hurt anybody.
Exactly. And like I was talking to my wife about this because I'm a little bit older. And so I remember my generation, like, people would say, oh, that gay guy, blah, blah, blah. And I said, why do you have to say gay? That's what our thing is. Why can't you just say Tom or Bill or whatever?
Right. I agree with that.
Really hard Troy labels, because we just, our philosophy of my generation, especially my 20s and 30s, was that we're all people. And now this new generation's coming up, and they seem to want labels more than anything.
Right.
And it's like, did you want to identify with something?
That's it. No, that's it. They want to be part of a group.
That's it. But it's worse than that. They want to be part of a team.
Yes.
And teams find enemies to combat, and it seems to always happen that way. Team, you're not with us, you're against us. I just wish we would get back to the point where just humans are humans and everybody's equal. That would be awesome to me.
Yeah, I agree. Let's just chill and not fight. So a couple more questions and we get out of here. Number one, is it true that you voiced Goku in Kai for like one or two scenes? I remember hearing that, but I don't think I ever got confirmation.
Oh, yeah. I did have to do some voice matching for something. I do remember doing that.
So you were able to mimic Sean? Because that seems like a very hard thing to do. I've seen people try to sound like Sean and even Peter Kalamis, but it's hard. It's not that easy, and you did it. So I didn't even.
Most of us, especially the ones who've been here for a long time, and back in the day, we did there's only 20 actors. That was the initial talent we had to get in. These days, we have so many actors to choose from. We can typecast every role. Most of the people who came in could do hundreds of voices. So I think it was a scheduling thing, and they had to get it out that day or whatever. And so they said, "Can you do Sean?" And I said, "Well, you're gonna have to play it for me a few hundred times." So they played me his voice, a reasonable facsimile. There's no way I could sustain a convincing Sean Schimmel for an entire episode, or probably even an entire scene. But one or two lines I might be able to fake.
Right. Okay, well that makes sense then. Are there any mimics? Are there any mimics that you've done in the past that okay, you don't have to give them away, but I know that in the business there are like private mimics. For example, for those who don't know, let's say Robert Downey records for Avengers Endgame and he can't come back in, or else it'll cost Disney, I don't know, $2,000 an hour to get him back in. What they'll do is they'll hire voice actors to actually mimic Robert Downey's voice. People don't know this secret, but it is a secret. Sorry for giving it away, but yeah, it happens all the time, but nobody ever noticed it because they're not credited. Have you done any of those? Or I'm guessing you've done a couple in your career where you just weren't credited.
I just did Elmer Fudd.
Well, you're credited on that one, right? Or were you not credited?
I don't know if I was credited or not.
Oh, okay.
I was paid. I got paid a lot of money for that one line. But it was something that was just like what you're saying. It was a crunch situation when the schedule did not allow for them to get the guy, and they had to come out this day, so they needed somebody quick. I just came in and did that one line.
But it doesn't just happen for animation. Live action movies have this, and you can't tell because they edit it so well.
Yeah, it's just, or sometimes like the mic might have gone out, you know, or somebody might have slurred a word or whatever, and they can't get the actor back, so they just get somebody to do that line, you know.
It's
The thing about mimics is they're very dangerous because you're like, oh man, you could get replaced by somebody who can do your voice.
Who wants to
And
undercut?
like,
Yeah.
when Steve Bloom took over Toonami Tom, I was like, holy shit, he's doing an impression of me. Look, I haven't heard any Krillins that I thought were really good.
I'll try. Goku down there. That was terrible.
I'm there.
No, there was a line I remember in the old dub, where it was Krillin and Goku were flying toward the Cell Game Arena, and I remember your line was Goku over there, and I remember that was like a meme between me and my friends. I'm not a very very good at mimicking your voice. I know that I've done it as jokes. It's like you guys when you're young, you do it as jokes around your friends. You know, or like when Krillin gets killed and he goes, "Help me," because I always criticize that line in the old Z dub because he's supposed to.
Say you're in the ballpark.
Well, I appreciate that coming from you. That means a lot. But in the old Z dub, he's supposed to say Goku, and then he gets killed, which is supposed to be the reason why saying Goku and not help me is more effective is because the last words that your best friend says before he dies is your name. That's like extra levels of emotion. And I guess whoever wrote the script for the dub episode changed it to help me. And I never liked that. This was like in '99. This is like when you guys first did season 3.
I agree. I think it's much more powerful for him to shout out Goku.
Yeah, which you did in Kai, so it doesn't matter. So, what are your favorite voice roles in your career? What is your absolute it doesn't have to be one, just which ones did you enjoy doing the most?
Krillin, definitely. Lupin the Third, Maze Hughes, of course. Usopp is definitely one of my favorites, but my absolute favorite of all of them was Koro Sensei from Assassination Classroom.
Why that character? That's interesting.
Well, because he's the most like me. So I got him. Like, I got him right away. I knew this guy, like, from the first episode. And I would explain to the directors what's going on. What he's saying is this. And I totally got him. But what's weird about that, Funimation's really bad about telling you if you got cast in something or not. Like, I was asked to come in and record for Joel. I did what I was doing. I walked in and I said, "So what are we doing?" He goes, "Oh, well, you're the lead in this show." I'm like, "What? Why didn't you tell me? I could have researched this, you know?" Now I'm coming in raw. First couple of scenes, and I think we recorded 2 scenes, and I said, "Can we go back and re-record the first scene? Because I know who he is now." And so we went back and re-recorded it, and I just connected with him right away. But yeah, we a lot of times we just don't have the luxury of the time to research. Just go sort of do the best we can. So you've got to be on your toes in the booth. You've got to be ready for anything when you go in there. What the session's going to bring, you know? Unless they say, "Hey, we need you to do some more One Piece this week. I know exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be screaming and losing my voice." Even so, Usopp is definitely one of my favorite characters. Most to do.
I could see you do so. Your 2 gigs right now, or your 3 gigs: coaching, artist, and voice acting. Are there any other big mountains you want to climb here? Any other goals you might have for the future that you haven't done yet? A career goal, or just anything that's in your head that you're like, okay, that's my next big mountain to climb?
Well, I would like to get back into doing more comic books. I'm doing a series now that's a bi-monthly book. A lot of free time. And so in my free time, I've been filling up my sketchbooks with short stories. So eventually I would like to maybe get to where I'm doing once a year. I'll put out a 30-page comic of short stories that I've done. Sell them through Dark Horse, or if they don't want to carry it, just publish it myself. I've done that before pretty successfully. Heroes were always self-publishers. And I had self-published quite a few times throughout my life. I've got a video game that's a major announcement that I can't announce yet. And I've got a show I'm doing right now that we can't announce either that's huge.
I understand.
But yeah, I love anything that stretches me artistically. I probably will get back into painting again. I haven't painted in years. I used to be a portrait artist. I would paint portraits of people.
I never knew that. I mean, I knew you were a regular comic, but I knew you would do portraits, but I didn't know like with actual paintbrush and the canvas and everything.
Yeah, I worked at a stand at a tourist trap in Dallas called the West End Marketplace. Do portraits in pencil, and I would also do as well. And from there, they could order paintings from me of portraits as well. So I did a lot of acrylic paintings of people. But the sad thing is back then, telephones couldn't take pictures, right?
Right.
I didn't have a record. I always intended to get these people's addresses and stuff. But meanwhile, so there's hundreds of paintings that I've done that I have no idea where they are. I like to get back into painting and keep a better track of them if I sell them.
That's great. Multi-talented artiste here. So final thoughts here, close out. Go ahead and plug whatever you want to plug. Sonny Strait Studios, social media, whatever you want the people to contact you on, or obviously your classes. I'm guessing, like we talked about your studio, you have art, you have an animation guy there, you've got like stage stuff, so maybe you could teach him a little bit of stage. But you know what? The floor is yours. Plug whatever you want.
Okay, well, of course, keep following all the Funimation projects that we're doing. SonnyStraitStudios.com if you want to sign up for my classes. Sonny Strait Studios to watch some of the animations we've been doing. And also November, Dark Horse puts out the first issue that I'm drawing. So be on the lookout for that in local comic book stores.
What's the name of the title?
Here. Huh?
What was the title? What was that? The title?
Elfquest.
It is Elfquest. I'm sorry, I cut out for a second.
Stargazer's Hunt is the name of the graphic novel we're working on.
Elfquest Stargazer's Hunt. Got it. Okay.
And it will be released. Each chapter will be 20 pages, released as a single issue, and then put together as a graphic novel when it's done.
This November.
This November. So I will be doing that. Book will be coming out until the beginning of 2021.
Okay. And like we said, Sonny Strait Studios, to become an actor or to get your foot in the door. And why not, really? It's the best. It's better than just having I feel like going to your classes is better than having to go to LA and hope to get discovered. At the very least, in your classes, you might get discovered by you, of all people, and there you go.
That does happen. I mean, I've made many recommendations of people at Funimation. So is my engineer. When they go, like when he's watching people, he'll go right to work the next day and go, who you should cast is this person from Sonny's class. Just a great experience, I think, for the students. Even if they don't become professional actors, they all become more dynamic speakers by the end of the weekend. So at the very least, you will come out of my class as a more confident and a more dynamic speaker.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to me. It really means a lot to me. Everybody check out Sonny Strait Studios and check out Sonny on various social media platforms. Thank you so much for being here. I've learned a lot, and I hope people out there who are aspiring artists can pick up your story and, and say, hey, and maybe even appreciate your work more, knowing that the kind of the struggle you went through and the success. It's just so cool that, you grew up a fan of something like art or, and theater, and then you're doing it. And I always tell people, man, I'm always like, man, try it. It doesn't hurt to try. You might not make it right away. It might take some years, but it'll be worth it in the end. I always say that.
I always say this is self-expression. It's not a competition. If it was a competition, we would have a winner by now. Caveman days. Who's the winner? Is it Michelangelo, Leonardo, Donatello? I like Dali, and he's not even a Ninja Turtle.
He threw me off there for a second.
My point is that the only thing you're in competition with is yourself. goal should not be, oh, I'm going to make it big someday. Your goal should be to be in the moment and creating stuff, teaching yourself all the time. If you have that attitude, you will eventually make it in something. Also, enjoy the process, and that's the only thing that really exists, is this moment.
Yeah, like Yoda said, live in the now and, don't worry about the future yet.
I will not be the first person. I will not contradict Yoda.
Right? Even though he kind of does it himself sometimes, but that's part of the character, so it's all good. It's all love. Well,
yeah, he's been retconned a few times.
You're right. Well, thank you so much, sir. It means a lot to me that you were here. And check out Sonny, and we'll talk to y'all very soon. Thank you again.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Have a great one.